Welcome to a very special episode of the Autism Annex podcast. I'm John Andrew Slominski. Social emotional learning, or SEL, has been shown to improve outcomes for neurotypical and neurodiverse students alike. And for students with autism in particular, the positive effects of SEL instruction range from friendship skills to emotional regulation and even improved academic scores. However, a recent study published in the Journal of Social and Emotional Learning revealed an alarming statistic. As of 2024, only 11% of current SEL research takes into account students with disabilities, and only 1.1% consider students with autism. And this is where the SOLER curriculum comes in. SOLER, which stands for Social Learning and Emotional Regulation, is a comprehensive social skills curriculum for students with autism and other learning challenges. Through evidence-based lessons and a scope and sequence that provides scaffolded learning opportunities, teachers can provide students targeted learning instruction in social skills. And today we are announcing a new SOLER curriculum, SOLER Essentials, which is coming this winter. SOLER Essentials adapts the same evidence-based SEL curriculum for specialized instructional settings and for students who need more support and structure. Here with me today are Elizabeth Price, Catherine Morrow, Ryan Mead, and Rem Fairlam, representing the team of innovators who brought the SOLER curriculum to life. Welcome to all of you.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Catherine, as curriculum director, you oversee a team of lesson writers and editors and content developers, all the way through illustration and layout. Could you give us the view of SOLER from 30,000 feet?
SOLER is an online platform that's going to deliver social emotional curriculum to students with autism. And so it's using the CASTLE domain areas of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So we're going to take those areas and we're going to use evidence-based practices to teach lessons. Everything that the teacher needs is on the platform, and it's really interactive for the students. There's also print materials. And I just say, in general, it takes really abstract concepts and breaks them down into smaller pieces for learning or smaller pieces of instruction.
Elizabeth, you're the senior product manager, and you're responsible for the application and the technology side of things related to SOLER. As your team took SOLER from an idea to an actual digital platform, what were some of the critical must-have features for users?
Yeah, I think, Catherine, you did a really good job of kind of hitting on the main curriculum pieces of SOLER, why it works in our classrooms. And Catherine mentioned a little bit about the platform as well. And we've designed the SOLER platform to be not only a tool for students and for content delivery, but also simultaneously a tool for teachers, parents, and educators to access data collection, resources that they can use both during all of the instructional sessions that Catherine talked about, but then also during, opportunities in other areas of the school day, like specials or general education, as well as home supports for families and caregivers to continue to support the learning at home. So SOLER is kind of this two-part thing. You have the content and the curricular material. And then when we pair that with the application that's been designed to support teachers in all of those areas like data collection, teaching, progress monitoring, it really comes together to be a tool for educators to really support those SEL skills for students in the classroom and at home.
Catherine, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, students with autism are severely underrepresented when it comes to social and emotional learning. And as a former special ed teacher yourself, could you help us understand why SEL is so critical for these students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think really social emotional learning skills are the backbone of a successful, happy, thriving life. We know that learners with, autism spectrum disorder or ADHD do struggle with executive functioning skills. And executive functioning skills are so highly tied and connected to social emotional learning skills. So Those are things like being able to attend to learning and attend to other people and attend to your environment, being able to organize your thoughts or structure information that you receive, being able to monitor your own behavior, problem solve, manage emotions, and inhibit impulses and control are really, really crucial skills for all of us. And individuals, who have autism or other developmental disabilities may have some struggles or challenges in those areas, and we need to explicitly teach those skills. It's not kind of, I've heard, as a former special ed teacher, heard the term hidden curriculum. It's coined that way, really, I think, really eloquently, because I have had to explain skills to students or explain a situation to a student, and one of my students looked at me and said, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, I just know it. I don't know. I didn't know how to say how I knew, right? And so I think it's really important to be able to have all students have access to those skills that they need, that are those basic foundations for success in school, community, home, and just general well-being.
Elizabeth, what was the motivation behind SOLER when it first launched in 2022?
I would say, when I kind of zoom out and I think holistically, I'm like, what has our goal been since the beginning? And our goal has really been twofold. It's to, first and foremost, it's to serve the students and to give them these really pivotal, critical life behaviors that are going to help them be successful in a variety of environments. But then paired with that, it's to do the hard work for the teachers to make their lives easier so that they can focus on the teaching. So we've done the research, we've built the scope and sequence, we've looked at all of these different components and guidelines and curricular areas and said, here's the most important social skills to help students be successful. Here's what you need to teach it. We're going to make it really easy for you, really efficient for you. You go focus on helping those kids and you go focus on teaching the skills. So I think about our two main stakeholders, teachers and students, and how do we bring those two together to really ultimately better the lives of the students who really need this instruction.
Ryan Mead, I'd like to bring you into the conversation as well. Ryan, you're behind the user interface and the user experience, or UI, UX, which means that you've had a hand in everything involving the look and feel and design of SOLER, literally everything that users interact with in the digital platform. What can users expect from that experience?
So my background has been mostly in design, everything from marketing to application to illustration to a little bit of everything. So on the solar side, I think one thing that we really tried to focus on is when you're on a given page of solar, is trying to just focus on one or two sort of call to actions or focus points. I think a lot of times when we're in these really complex applications, we tend to find like, oh, there's 10 different ways to do this one thing or 10 different places you can do this one thing. So what we're really trying to focus on, and we're making changes and improvements all the time, but really trying to guide the users in a way that's very intuitive, but at the same time allows them some flexibility and allows different ways to do things. So the other thing I think that we're kind of going through is making sure that we're considering there are all these different users that are using solar, and so we really need to consider that as part of, like, if I'm a teacher, or if I'm a caregiver, or if I'm a student, like, how do we create the best experience that works for all of them? There's just so many things that are, I think, that we can continue to improve on, but also that Solar is doing really, really well.
Rem Fairlam, you've been in the K through 12 field for a few decades, and you also have a very personal connection to this work. What's meaningful to you about the SOLER curriculum?
I've had a long career in the K-12 ed tech space. Almost all my roles have been in sales or marketing related roles. And I was just really drawn to the company because the products are just so spot on for our market. And in a way, we're a little bit specialized in niche anyway inside the K-12. And then, our work and our world, the people we serve, is a little niche within special ed. And so just very specific way to help students on the autistic spectrum. And I have a son at home who's 30 who I've got the benefit of seeing great teaching and really good products help him. So it's really terrific to be here.
Rem, I know you've built a lot of relationships with districts and administrators over the years. And when you're having conversations with decision makers, where does SEL fit into the picture for them?
Well, we hear a lot in districts, both in the gen ed and special ed population around behavior, that there's not just adverse, or, kind of harmful behavior, more of just socialization skills. So many students who are even academically on grade level, but just struggle socially to kind of fit in and know how to interact with others. And we're often hearing administrators say, what do you have to help my students who are on grade level academically but are struggling with some of these other social skills? And so SOLER has been helpful to many of those students, and particularly those who are maybe have been in special ed classrooms, but the desire to have them included in gen ed classrooms, this may be the barrier, and so SOLER is a terrific way to help those students learn new skills and then learn how to take the skills that they're learning with a teacher, in a small group, and then now go into a gen ed classroom and be able to apply it. So that's certainly been one of the things we've heard quite a bit about.
Elizabeth, the first version of the SOLER curriculum, known as SOLER Classic, launched about 3 years ago, and a new curriculum, SOLER Essentials, is coming to classrooms this winter. What sorts of feedback did you get from teachers in the meantime, and how did that help spur the creation of the new curriculum?
Our first version of SOLER Classic, we launched, and it was a really great opportunity for us to embed social emotional learning in a curricular format and have a scope and sequence for teachers. And as they were using the product, we started to get a little bit of feedback around, my students need a little bit more as far as visual supports or more extended practice in some of the lessons. And we realized that some populations of our users who were using SOLER Classic needed a different iteration of the program that provided higher supports for students, more visuals, additional practice opportunities. And that's really how SOLER Essentials was kind of born, is we said, wow, this SOLER Classic is really working for those resource kids who have some social emotional learning needs, but are also spending a lot of time in gen ed. But we also need this iteration for maybe more of our students with higher support needs who need that additional support. And I think that's the biggest thing we learned through that first release of SOLER Classic, is how do we iterate on this program to provide a version that is for those students with higher support needs.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different approach because I'm focusing a little bit less on the curriculum side. But I think that what we did so well in SOLER Classic, we're able to take that and build off of it. We're able to, like Elizabeth said, take out that sort of frustration and that extra time that teachers are having to use on trying to understand and learn these new products, and rather focus on what's the easiest, most streamlined method to give you the stuff that really matters. And so I think we've done a really great job of taking what worked really well and what can be improved. And so I'm just really excited to kind of see what people have to say.
Elizabeth, as you think about the backbone of the SOLER curriculum, what makes it stand out from other resources or tools, especially if teachers are sort of cobbling together bits and pieces to make sure that their students' needs are met?
Something that I think makes SOLER, both SOLER Classic and SOLER Essentials, really unique is it's easy if you go into a classroom to point out things that a student is struggling with. So that student can't take turns, or that student can't wait in line, or that student is struggling to problem solve a conflict with friends, right? It's really obvious when we see these challenging behaviors or these challenging scenarios in classrooms. And what I think SOLER does that's unique is teachers can recognize that those things are problems, but SOLER gives them a very defined scope and sequence for how to teach and solve those problems. So recognizing the problem is easy because typically when they're SEL skills, they're the most obvious problems that kids are having, or the ones that are most easily highlighted in their day-to-day interactions. But SOLER defines exactly how to work through those skills in a sequence that is defined through research and through the use of evidence-based practices. So it's just a really critical tool that teachers can have to feel confident in their teaching abilities. We tell that teacher, well, first you teach this and then this, and eventually that student through that instruction is going to get better in waiting in line in the classroom, waiting in line at the water fountain, waiting in line outside at the bus. And so we really iterate that instruction. So those decisions are kind of made for teachers, those challenging decisions.
Catherine, as your team was writing the SOLER Essentials curriculum for students with unique needs, what were some of your priorities?
With SOLER Essentials, it was really important to us to bring in social emotional curriculum for students with higher support needs who may be in self-contained classroom environments, who maybe don't have conversational language or conversational verbal language, I should say. Maybe that students are communicating through augmentative communication devices or pictures. And so lots of visual supports bring in opportunities for students to communicate using pictures. And so if it's a lesson on teaching a student, self-advocacy skills like asking for help, we're going to provide help cards that the teachers can just print out, laminate, cut them out, and then now a student who maybe can't currently use their voice to ask for help now has a picture or a card. And teachers don't have to, go searching everywhere to create some card. They just print it and they have it ready to go. So that was really at the top of our minds when we were creating the curriculum. We were really thinking about how can we make this accessible to all of our students? And really it was bringing in just more structure, more visual supports, and keeping things structured, but hopefully simple.
Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm wondering if you could give us an example of one of your favorite SOLER Essentials lessons.
For Essentials, for me, I think my favorite, and it's just been so fun getting to see it from initial ideas and the amazing, talented lesson writers who have been creating all of these lessons. And I think one lesson that really got me super excited, it's a sequence or series of lessons where we're teaching students how to pair emotions with different tracks on a train, basically. And so not only are we teaching them things like the blue track, right? So if I'm in the blue track, maybe I'm tired or sleepy or bored. And then we're kind of teaching them to identify that. Or if I'm in the green track, I'm alert and I'm ready to learn. If I'm on the red track, maybe I'm angry or frustrated. And then we're going to teach that. And then in a next lesson, we're going to teach about tools that you can use when you're in each of those zones. And the way that just visually it has come together, I think is really clear for the students to understand. It's visually, these visual supports and charts and everything, they just look really beautiful as well. And it's just been such a cool, creative way for these concepts, I think, to be taught. And I'm really excited to get in the hands of teachers and students.
Ryan, I know that accessibility for users played a big role in the design and interface. And that applies to things that users might even take for granted, but were really front of mind for your team.
I think one thing from a UI perspective, when we're talking about accessibility, is just making sure that visually accessibility, we are following all the guidelines. We are making sure that things have enough contrast, that text is large enough, like pretty standard stuff on that end. I feel like I nerd out about that stuff. And like you said, maybe people won't notice that right away, but that is definitely a huge consideration for us.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, you do a really great job as the UI UX designer of tracking how our users are accessing a variety of the features. So whether that be data collection or instructional materials, or how they're accessing the drop down to view the content for the standards or whatever that is. We're watching how users are accessing that and where those frustration points are. Where are they rage clicking because they can't access what they want or it's not clear. And Ryan does a really great job of then, he and I work together with the technology team to modify the application in order to, again, create that efficient process for teachers so they aren't spending time frustrated by the platform and they're given that time back to spend with students and to focus on instruction.
Rem, in addition to your professional expertise in SEL, you and your family have a lot of lived experience. How have you seen social emotional learning play out in your family, and especially in the life of your son, Preston?
Yeah, so my son was pretty nonverbal for most of his, early years, and it was a reading program that kind of unlocked his ability to communicate some, but just language and vocabulary is still challenging for him. And so a lot of times people, especially if he's shy, if you meet somebody new, he won't say much. And so a lot of times people thought there was a hearing issue. But to explicitly teach kind of how to meet somebody and how to then leave somebody when we're saying goodbye and he says instead of saying goodbye, he's not sure this or that. So we've just had a few situations where he has surprised us by, he feels the way people are. And so having taught him some of these explicit things, if he's felt close to somebody and now it's time to leave, we had this happen with some friends of ours. They've known Preston and seen him grow up. And as we were leaving where we weren't going to see them for a while, he went over and gave both of them individually a hug and said goodbye to each one. And it was, we don't normally don't normally see that. It kind of completely surprised all of us. So I think you learn those skills and learning, like you said earlier, Elizabeth, how to apply them and when to apply them, and to see that just kind of happen naturally is terrific. And I'm sure that our students who are engaged in the SOLER curriculum and the teachers who teach it probably have just so many stories like that in schools. That's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, it's funny, as Rem was talking, I was thinking, and I'm like, at the time of this story, SOLER didn't exist. This was back in like 2012, 2013. I was a teacher. I was early in my career. I was teaching in an elementary school. I was working in a self-contained classroom with kids with autism, but I was a part of our school's PBIS program, and I had a peer buddy that I would check in and check out with every day. And he was a student in second grade who, appeared as a general education student, but he did have an IEP around social supports and around addressing some of his challenging behavior in the classroom. And one of the things that I remember is we worked for months and months on how do I manage my emotions? How do I have that self-management, which is one of our curricular areas in our SOLER program, when I'm upset or when I'm frustrated or when something's happening that I don't like. And this second grader, who I cared so much for, would struggle in the classroom and would have these horrible meltdowns where, things would get thrown and we'd be running out of the classroom. And it really isolated him socially, to really no fault of his own, because he needed supports to help manage his emotions. And so for months, we worked on how do I respond when I'm feeling frustrated, or how do I respond when my teacher does something that upsets me. And so some examples of things we do in the SOLER curriculum are we teach self-management strategies like taking a break, taking deep breaths, counting to 10. And we worked on some of those things as well. Again, I didn't have SOLER at that time, but that's just best practice. And through the course of the year, and while it was a very slow process, we saw minor improvements for this student. When he was getting frustrated, when he was getting upset, he was communicating, he was using those strategies. And what was really cool about it is that not only did his teacher benefit and the other teachers in the school, because he wasn't escaping the classroom and, making the learning environment very difficult. Instead, he was managing his emotions in the classroom and then gaining friends because of it, because he was no longer so isolated. He wasn't that one kid who would throw the chair across the room. He was the kid who had some strategies to use and wasn't maybe so intimidating to the other kids. And so it was this kind of dual effort over the year. And we saw these improvements that really work in a lot of areas of his life when it comes to those social skills.
Something you said, Elizabeth, really made me remember how you said I didn't have SOLER then, and I just think about how much I wish I would have had it. I think about that on almost a daily basis in my job and have for my past 10 years at STAR. I never actually had any of our curriculum while I was a teacher. And I just constantly am thinking, I have certain students in my brain that I still think about. And I'm like, I wish I had this curriculum for you. And SOLER Essentials is one of those now that I'm really seeing it. I taught students grades 3 through 6 in a self-contained classroom. And there's so many students. I'm like, oh, if I had just known how to teach you these skills, like I just wonder, right? And I feel like, oh, I wish I had this scope and sequence. I wish it was broken down. I had to hunt and find and create absolutely everything myself and did the best I could, but it just would have been so amazing if I had had a guide, just this research-backed curriculum, scope and sequence. And I just think students would have just doubled or tripled probably the amount of progress and skills that they learned. And so, that's something I literally think about daily.
Yeah. And I think that the one thing that I have kind of taken is never assuming that I know what's best, like using my knowledge from a design and a UX perspective, but never taking that as like the final word, like making sure that we are using data and feedback and, like Elizabeth said, how teachers are using the thing to kind of like produce the best possible product in the end. So that's been a really good learning experience on this product, especially.
I'll just take maybe a teacher's perspective to say these skills that are so important and that you can recognize when they're lacking in your students are absolutely teachable, and a good curriculum that's flexible and provides you both assessment capabilities as well as all kinds of supports and activities and ways to generalize. When that's put into place with a loving teacher who wants the best for their students, really wonderful things can happen, and seeing growth happen for young people. So that's what SOLER Essentials is all about.
Well, Elizabeth, Catherine, Rem, and Ryan, I want to thank you all for being here and showing us behind the scenes of the SOLER curriculum.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
To learn more about the SOLER curriculum, visit starautismsupport.com/SOLER. That's SOLER. The Autism Annex podcast was created by STAR Autism Support. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Andrew Slominski, and until next time, take good care of yourself and one another.